Welcome to the All Sorts podcast, your one-stop shop for all sorts of fascinating deep dives.
That's right.
And today, we are going on a journey into the heart of a centuries-old prayer practice.
Okay.
The Rosary.
Specifically,
The
joyful mysteries.
The joyful mysteries. You've shared some really interesting sources on this.
Yes, I have.
And I am so eager to unpack them with you and with our listeners.
Let's do it.
We're going to be exploring the structure of the Rosary. The events celebrated in the joyful mysteries.
Okay.
And how these ancient stories can still speak to us
Yes.
in the modern world.
Now, what I find intriguing about the Rosary, especially for someone like yourself seeking a deeper understanding, is its structure.
Okay.
It's not just a random assortment of prayers.
Right.
It's a carefully crafted journey through pivotal moments in the life of Jesus and Mary.
It's like a spiritual choose-your-own-adventure, right? You've
Right.
got these different sets of mysteries, and each one is like a chapter unfolding a different part of the story.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the joyful mysteries, the ones we're focusing on today, take us through the events surrounding Jesus' birth and childhood.
Now, I've heard people say that the Rosary can feel repetitive.
Okay.
You know, you've got the Our Father, a series of Hail Marys, and then concluding prayers like the Glory Be.
Right.
But I have a feeling
Yeah.
there's more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. That repetition is intentional. It's not about mindlessly reciting words.
I see.
Think of it as a gentle rhythm,
Okay.
a way to quiet the mind and open the heart to the mystery being contemplated.
So it's less about the words themselves.
Yes.
And more about the space they create for reflection.
Exactly. It's a form of meditative prayer,
Okay.
inviting you to enter into the scene, to imagine the sights, the sounds, and emotions of each event.
The emotions. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So are you ready to step into the first joyful mystery?
Let's do it. We begin with the Annunciation,
Okay.
a story that's both familiar and profoundly mysterious.
I'm picturing the scene. The angel Gabriel appearing before Mary, a young woman from Nazareth, with this mind-blowing message.
Yeah.
She's going to become the mother of God.
Wow.
It's such a pivotal moment, not just in her life,
Right.
but in all of history.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about this event?
What always strikes me is the sheer magnitude of what's being asked of Mary.
Yeah.
It's not just a change in her life plan, it's a complete upheaval of everything she knew.
Right.
And yet she responds with such remarkable faith and trust.
Her yes is so powerful.
Yeah.
It makes me think about those times in my own life when I felt God nudging me towards something that seemed scary or impossible.
It's a reminder that saying yes to God, even when we don't fully understand, can open us to incredible possibilities.
I love that. Incredible possibilities.
And one of the sources you shared even draws a fascinating parallel between the Annunciation and the story of Moses and the burning bush.
Oh, right. Both chosen by God for these extraordinary missions.
That's right.
Both facing the unknown with a mix of awe and trepidation.
Yes.
It really puts Mary's yes into perspective, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
It highlights the courage and humility it takes to surrender to God's will. Now, moving on to the second joyful mystery, we have the Visitation. This is where Mary, newly pregnant with Jesus, travels to see her cousin Elizabeth, who is also miraculously pregnant with John the Baptist.
Two expectant mothers, both chosen for incredible roles in salvation history.
That's right.
It's almost like this divine tapestry being woven thread by thread.
What's beautiful about the Visitation is the emphasis on love and support, especially between women.
Yeah.
Mary, despite her own anxieties and uncertainties, sets out on a journey to be there for her cousin.
It's a powerful reminder that even amidst our own struggles, we're called to be present for others.
Yes, that's right.
And speaking of powerful moments, one of the sources you shared pointed out a connection between the Visitation and the story of Obed-Edom welcoming the Ark of the Covenant into his home.
That's right. Both stories highlight the joy and awe that come from receiving a sacred presence.
Oh, wow.
And the blessings that flow from such radical hospitality.
These Old Testament connections are fascinating. They add such depth and richness to the mysteries.
They do.
Now, on to the third joyful mystery.
Okay.
One that's familiar to pretty much everyone.
Yes.
The Nativity.
The Nativity is a story that never gets old, does it?
Never gets old.
There's something so captivating about the image of Jesus being born in a humble stable.
I think it speaks to our longing for simplicity.
Yeah.
For a world stripped down to the essentials, love, family, the quiet joy of new life.
And it's a profound statement about the nature of God, isn't it?
It is.
The creator of the universe choosing to enter the world in such humble circumstances.
It's complete inversion of what we usually associate with power and authority.
Exactly.
One of the sources even mentioned how the Basilica's Nativity Chapel depicts this scene.
Okay.
Connecting it back to Isaiah's prophecy of a virgin birth.
It's a beautiful example of how the Old Testament foreshadows the new, revealing a continuity of God's plan throughout history.
It's all coming together like a puzzle, isn't it?
It is.
Now, let's move on to the fourth joyful mystery, the presentation in the temple.
Okay.
This is where Mary and Joseph, following Jewish law, present Jesus in the temple.
It's a seemingly simple act, but it's filled with layers of meaning.
Okay.
It's an act of obedience, of dedication, of recognizing that this child ultimately belongs to God.
And it's here that we meet Simeon, an old man who had been promised he wouldn't die until he saw the Messiah. Can you imagine the emotion, the weight of that moment when he recognized Jesus?
It must have been incredible. And his words to Mary, while filled with joy, also contain a hint of sorrow. He prophesies that a sword will pierce her heart, foreshadowing the suffering that Jesus and Mary will endure.
It's a reminder that even amidst the joy and celebration, it's a shadow of sacrifice, a recognition that following God's plan doesn't exempt us from pain. And finally, we arrive at the fifth joyful mystery, the finding in the temple. Remember, Jesus is 12 years old here, and he stays behind in Jerusalem while Mary and Joseph are frantically searching for him.
I can only imagine the worry and anguish they must have felt. But when they finally find him, his response is so intriguing.
What is it?
He says, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?"
Even at such a young age, he's already aware of his mission, his connection to God the Father.
It's a powerful moment that invites us to reflect on our own relationship with God. Where is our Father's house? What are the places, the activities, the people that bring us closer to God, that nourish our souls and remind us of who we truly are?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure, and one that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the joyful mysteries.
I agree. I agree. Welcome back to our deep dive into the joyful mysteries.
Yes.
You know, as we've been talking about these events, I've been struck by how they're both deeply human and profoundly divine.
That's such a great point. It's like they capture those universal experiences, joy, sorrow, hope, longing, but also point to something beyond ourselves.
Yes.
Something transcendent.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so relatable. So timeless, they offer a glimpse into the human heart, but also into the very heart of God.
So in the first part, we kind of gave our listener a bird's eye view of the joyful mysteries.
Yes.
Now I'm excited to slow down and really unpack each one.
Let's do it.
Starting with the Annunciation.
Perfect. Let's revisit that moment when the angel Gabriel appears before Mary, revealing God's plan for her to become the mother of Jesus. It's an event brimming with grace, but also one that raises so many questions.
Like, what must have been going through Mary's mind? She was so young. Did she have any idea what she was saying yes to?
That's what I find so compelling about the Annunciation. It's not just about divine intervention. It's about human free will. Mary could have said no.
She could have.
She could have chosen a different path.
Wow.
But instead, she responds with this incredible act of faith and surrender.
And her yes changes the course of history. It's a powerful reminder that even seemingly ordinary people can be called to extraordinary things.
Absolutely. And one of the sources you shared highlighted this point beautifully, suggesting that Mary's yes is a model for us in discerning God's will in our own lives. It's about listening for that still small voice within and having the courage to respond even when it feels risky or uncertain.
It makes me think about those moments in my life when I've felt a pull towards something, a sense of calling, but also a lot of fear and hesitation.
Those are the moments when Mary's example can be so inspiring.
It can.
She teaches us that saying yes to God often requires a leap of faith,
right?
A willingness to step outside our comfort zones and trust that He will guide our steps.
It's a beautiful message of surrender and trust.
It is.
Now let's move on to the second joyful mystery, the visitation.
Yeah.
Mary, newly pregnant with Jesus, travels to see her cousin Elizabeth,
right,
who is also miraculously pregnant.
What I find particularly moving about this mystery is the emphasis on compassion and support.
Okay.
Mary, despite being in the very early stages of her own pregnancy, sets out on a journey to help her cousin.
Wow.
It's a testament to the power of female friendship.
Yeah.
And the importance of showing up for one another.
Right.
Especially during times of need.
And there's that incredible moment when the two women meet.
Yeah.
And the unborn John the Baptist leaps in Elizabeth's womb.
Right.
Recognizing the presence of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like this beautiful pre-birth acknowledgement of their interconnected destinies.
It gives me chills every time I think about it.
Me too.
And it's a reminder that we're all connected in ways we may not fully understand.
That's right.
Our lives touch one another.
Yeah.
And even the smallest acts of kindness can have ripple effects we may never see.
It's like that quote from Mother Teresa.
Oh, yes.
We can do no great things.
Yes.
Only small things with great love.
Exactly. And the visitation is a beautiful example of that.
It is.
It's about showing up for others in simple, practical ways.
Right.
Offering a listening ear.
A helping hand.
A shoulder to cry on.
It makes me think about the people in my own life who have been there for me during difficult times.
Yeah.
Those who have offered a kind word or a warm embrace when I needed it most.
We all need those people, don't we?
We do.
And the visitation reminds us that we can be those people for others.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to a mystery that's probably very familiar to our listener.
Okay.
But one that always seems to reveal new layers of meaning.
Yes.
The Nativity.
The Nativity is such a rich and complex story.
It is.
It's a story about humility, about the power of simplicity, about the unexpected ways in which God chooses to reveal Himself.
I love that you used the word unexpected.
I did.
Because who would have expected the Son of God to be born in a stable,
I know,
surrounded by animals and shepherds? It's such a radical departure from what we typically associate with power and majesty.
And that's precisely what makes the Nativity so profound.
I agree.
It challenges our assumptions about what it means to be great.
Right.
It suggests that true greatness lies not in wealth or status, but in humility.
Right.
In selflessness, in love.
It makes me think about our own lives.
Yeah.
And how often we get caught up in the pursuit of success and material possessions.
The Nativity invites us to pause
Yes.
and reflect on what truly matters.
It does.
It asks us to consider whether we're placing our trust in the things of this world or in the God who chose to become one of us, to share in our joys and sorrows, to walk alongside us on our journey.
It's a message of hope and humility that's so relevant in today's world.
It is.
Okay, let's move on to the fourth joyful mystery. The presentation in the temple.
Okay.
This is where Mary and Joseph, faithful to Jewish law, present Jesus in the temple.
It's a moment of both joy and sorrow. Joy in offering their child to God. Sorrow in knowing that He will face hardship and suffering as part of His mission.
And it's here that we meet Simeon, right?
Yes.
The old man who had been promised he wouldn't die until he saw the Messiah.
That's right.
His words to Mary are both beautiful and heartbreaking.
They are.
He prophesies that a sword will pierce her heart,
right,
foreshadowing the pain she will endure as she witnesses her son's suffering.
It's a reminder that even amidst the joy of the Nativity, there is a shadow of sacrifice, a recognition that following God's plan doesn't exempt us from pain.
Right.
And that's a hard truth.
It is.
But it's also a reality of the human experience.
It makes me think about the times in my own life when I've had to let go of something precious to surrender a dream or a relationship to God's will, even though it was painful.
The presentation teaches us that surrender is not always easy,
right,
but it is always an act of faith. It's about trusting that God can bring beauty and meaning even out of our losses, that He can weave our suffering into a larger tapestry of redemption.
It's a message of hope amidst the heartache.
Yes.
And finally, we arrive at the fifth joyful mystery, the finding in the temple.
Okay.
12-year-old Jesus stays behind in Jerusalem while Mary and Joseph are frantically searching for him.
I can only imagine their fear and worry.
I know.
And then when they finally find him,
yes,
his response is so striking.
It is.
He says, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?"
Even at such a young age.
Yes.
He's already aware of his divine mission.
Right.
His connection to God the Father.
It's a moment that invites us to reflect on our own relationship with God. Where do we find ourselves most at home?
Yeah.
What are the places, the activities, the relationships that nourish our souls and draw us closer to God?
It's a question that each of us needs to answer for ourselves. And the finding in the temple reminds us that sometimes we need to step away from the distractions of the world and create space for silence, for contemplation, for reconnecting with our true purpose.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive.
As we wrap up our exploration of the joyful mysteries, I'm realizing there's so much more to these stories than just the events themselves. It's like each mystery is a seed planted in our hearts, waiting to blossom into something beautiful.
That's a lovely way to put it. And that brings us to the concept of fruits associated with each mystery. It's not just about reflecting on the events. It's about allowing those reflections to shape our character, to cultivate specific virtues in our lives.
The fruits of the mysteries.
Yes.
Okay, so it's like each mystery is a mini course in spiritual growth, offering us a roadmap for living a more joyful and fulfilling life.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how each fruit flows naturally from the events of the mystery. Take the Annunciation, for example. Mary's yes to God's plan, despite her fear and uncertainty, bears the fruit of humility.
So humility isn't just about thinking less of ourselves. It's about thinking of ourselves less. It's about recognizing that we're not the center of the universe.
It's right.
That we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Precisely. Humility is about right-sizing ourselves in relation to God and others. It's about acknowledging our gifts and limitations and being willing to serve, to listen, to learn.
And it strikes me that humility is often the starting point for spiritual growth. It's like the fertile soil in which other virtues can take root.
That's a beautiful analogy. Now let's look at the visitation. Mary, going to help her cousin Elizabeth, even though she was newly pregnant herself, points us toward the fruit of love of neighbor.
It's a reminder that our faith isn't just about personal piety. It's about action, about going out into the world and sharing God's love in tangible ways.
Love of neighbor isn't about grand gestures.
I see.
It's about those everyday acts of kindness,
Okay.
compassion, and service.
Like offering a listening ear.
Yes.
Lending a helping hand. Simply being present for someone who's struggling.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing about love of neighbor is that it expands our hearts.
Okay.
It connects us to something beyond ourselves.
Okay, now on to the nativity.
Yes.
Jesus being born in a humble stable.
Right.
Stripping away all the trappings of wealth and power.
Uh-huh.
What fruit does that point us towards?
The nativity calls us to embrace poverty. Or detachment.
Detachment.
Not necessarily material poverty,
Right.
but a detachment from worldly things. A recognition that true happiness doesn't come from possessions or status.
That's so countercultural, especially in today's world.
I know.
Where we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we need to buy to be happy or successful.
The nativity invites us to simplify our lives, to be content with less, to focus on the things that truly nourish our souls. Relationships, experiences, service to others.
It's a call to reevaluate our priorities.
Yes.
To ask ourselves what truly matters. And it strikes me that detachment can be incredibly liberating.
It is.
It frees us from the tyranny of stuff. And allows us to focus on what's truly important.
Absolutely. It opens us up to a deeper kind of joy. One that's not dependent on external circumstances. Now, let's move on to the presentation in the temple. Mary and Joseph faithfully presenting Jesus to God. Even though Simeon's prophecy hinted at the suffering to come. What fruit does that cultivate?
It seems like a heavy one given the circumstances.
The fruit of the presentation is obedience.
Obedience.
It's about surrendering to God's will. Even when it's difficult or painful.
That's a tough one. Obedience. especially in a culture
It is.
that emphasizes individual autonomy and doing your own thing.
It is. Yeah. But obedience, in the context of faith, isn't about blind submission.
Okay.
It's about aligning our wills with God's will.
I see.
Seeking to understand His purpose for our lives. Okay. And responding with a loving yes.
It requires a lot of trust, doesn't it? Trust that God knows what's best for us.
It does.
Even when we don't understand His plan.
Trust is at the heart of obedience.
Okay.
And it's through obedience that we grow in holiness, that we become more like Christ.
And finally, we arrive at the finding in the temple. Jesus, already at 12, recognizing His mission, His need to be about His Father's business.
Yes.
What fruit does that story bring forth?
The finding in the temple points us toward devotion to Jesus. Okay. Or zeal for souls.
Zeal for souls.
It's about prioritizing our relationship with God, seeking Him above all else, and allowing that relationship to guide our actions and decisions.
It's about recognizing that our lives have a purpose.
Yes.
A meaning that extends beyond our own personal fulfillment.
Exactly. And the joyful mysteries as a whole remind us that this call to action isn't burdensome.
Okay.
It's joyful.
Joyful. Okay.
It's about embracing the adventure of faith.
Right.
The beauty of surrendering to God's plan. And the incredible fruits that blossom from that surrender.
It's been such a rich journey exploring these mysteries with you.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the Rosary.
I'm glad.
It's not just about reciting prayers.
Right.
It's about encountering Christ in a deeper, personal way and allowing that encounter to transform our lives.
Beautifully said. And remember, this deep dive is just a starting point.
Right.
There's so much more to discover, to contemplate, to experience through the Rosary. My Catholic Life is a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who want to continue this journey of exploration and discovery, we invite you to join our ever-growing community of curious minds.
Yes.
Like, share, and subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube.
That's right.
And follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads. Think of it as weaving a tapestry of knowledge.
Beautiful.
Connecting hearts and minds.
I like it.
One deep dive at a time.
Wonderful.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep those ears perked.
Okay.
And those minds open to all the wonders of the world.